Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I think to start off, thank you so much for attending. Thank you for the speakers for joining this event. Basically, we're a new team at GDSC. We're called Professional Development, and I'm here joined with Sajiva and Varun, and we're part of the team. We're very excited to share our very first event, which is called Navigating Tech Careers, which will consist of a panel session as well as a Q&A session with big tech interns. Serene, Saad, Aaron, and Didia, thank you so much for coming. The whole reason why we wanted to do this is we wanted to provide tech students with valuable insights from individuals on finding jobs and internships because I think that not just technical skills are important, but also soft skills and kind of learning the process is also very important, as well as networking. So this event will be a chance for you to ask your questions, network, and all of that. Before we start, I'll kind of give you guys a structure on how the event will run. So first, I'll be hosting the panel session, of course. But while we're doing this panel session, you guys can note down some specific questions that you want to ask specific people or just questions tailored to a specific company. Today we have Amazon, Microsoft, Shopify, AMD, as well as Muhammad will be joining us later in the conversation, and he's from CIBC. So please feel free to take notes, note down questions. This meeting is also going to be recorded, so if you ever need the recording, we can send you a Google Drive link after. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we start, we want to ask our amazing panelists introduction questions. So, can you please briefly introduce yourselves, share your role, the company that you interned at, and the type of projects that you worked on?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you, Anya, Sanjeevan, Varun, for organizing this. So, my name's Aditya Kumar, and I was a software engineer intern this past summer at Amazon. And so, I did like a canary, I was working with the canary testing toolkit. So, canary testing is just like a test that's running continuously, like every minute, every 5 seconds. So, you can catch that bug before like it affects people. So, they had their own in-house toolkit. So I was working with that and basically integrating these different testing frameworks so more people, more organizations inside like Amazon can use this canary testing toolkit rather than having to build it from scratch. So that's like the overview of my project, and I think later on we can talk more about it. But thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Zareen. I'm in my fifth year of engineering physics at McMaster. I was a software engineer intern at Microsoft last summer and at AWS the summer before. My projects typically was in the area of security and infrastructure. So the team I was at Microsoft was called Security Experience, where we created internal development tools for other engineers at Microsoft and helped to support a security culture. And at Amazon, I was working under the threat mitigation team where we were like protecting AWS websites and web pages for to prevent malicious actors from hacking into it.
Hi, my name is Saad, and I was working at Shopify this summer, specifically on the database mobility team. So this is in the infrastructure division of engineering, and I was mainly just working on database migrations as well as sharding, scalability, and zero downtime migrations. So my intern project was adding active retries to our internal migration tool for failed migrations, so we didn't have to get someone on call to retry them.
Hi everyone, I'm Aaron and I'm an SD intern at AMD as part of PY, so I'm doing a 16-month term. I primarily work on the kernel mode driver for AMD's Radeon graphics. To be more specific, I work on the Prime team and they handle power-related features as well as stuff like fault management. There's not really a specific intern project for the PUIs usually. It's more of just you're just like you get treated as an SD too, but they help you. You have a mentor and they help you along the way. But I guess like one if I could call it a project would be it's called like resume time, and we're basically trying to make GPUs resume from sleep as fast as possible, and then we have a whole bunch of stuff for that. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So let's start with the application process questions. So how did you guys prepare for the application process for your specific companies, and what resources were most helpful for you?
So my preparation, I guess, is obviously like the lead code and just doing those questions. But to be honest, doing the lead code wasn't really helpful for this interview because at least my interview was more kind of pseudocode based and the question wasn't even that hard. But I do recommend doing lead code. I think in general, it just makes you more sharp. And sometimes they do ask you questions that you've seen before, and that's really helpful. But I guess for Amazon in this case, it wasn't really that. But yeah, still recommend doing lead code. And apart from that and preparing, I think just also just practicing talking about your projects. There's like the STAR method, which is talking about the situation. I think it's like your projects. Have some like friend just do kind of a mock interview so you can just get that practice talking. And I think that's important because they do want to make sure that you're writing an example of like an actual project experience. So I think that was really helpful. I think that was my most preparation. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Aditya on like mock interviews. I remember doing 5 or 6 of them before both of my like before applying and like preparing for the interview process. In terms of applications, I also got my resume reviewed a lot. So if I had like friends who were working at companies that I wanted to work in, I would kind of ask them to look my resume over, see if like there's any areas that I could improve. And if there was like career fairs, I would also ask recruiters on their opinions on my resume and like areas I can fix and kind of to see like what they value the most. But yeah, I think like that was a big part. Like I spent 1 to 2 months at least fixing up my resumes, going to career events, like all of these kind of helped to make my application better when I actually applied.
Yeah, so just things that I would do in general, not just specific to Shopify, is for any company I'm applying to, I want to understand their specific recruitment process and the type of candidate that they're looking for. So for Shopify specifically, I knew from some friends that already worked there that it's very important to apply early, and I kind of had an idea of what kind of engineer they wanted to hire, and I kind of tailored my initial application to that to make myself more memorable. Then in the interviews, again, I know that Shopify doesn't really like to ask leak code style questions, but they do like candidates that can talk about past projects for both my behavioral and technical interview. I made sure that um, I would get that point across to my interviewer, whether it be talking about past projects or in the technical interview, just acting like an owner when you're going through the code and explaining to the person assessing you, the decisions that you're making. So you kind of want to fit the profile of the type of person that that company wants to hire, whether it's Shopify or any other company you'd want to work for.
Um, yeah, for the application process, I really like you just have to have a really good resume. I went over a lot of iterations before I ended with my current one. If you're struggling to get the right format, just search online for a resume template in LaTeX, fill it in. That's basically what everyone does, and then you can tweak it from there. Because if you have a bad resume, you're not going to get any interviews, especially in big tech where a lot of companies will put your resume through ATS before manually screening them. I've also sat with recruiters, and like Zareen said, like they give really valuable feedback, and you can see exactly what they're looking for. Like even you'd be surprised what matters a lot to them. Even like putting skills before education or something like that. Like, they really care about that stuff. It helps make it easier for them to scan your resume quickly. Another thing is that during when you're preparing the application process, try to make multiple resumes if you can for different types of jobs. So like if you can, don't apply for full stack systems, machine learning researcher, or whatever job with the same resume. You should ideally try to target the specific job with your resume. And yeah, after that, just keep applying apply to different positions, even if you feel like you're not qualified for them, using the co-op portal, LinkedIn, or just search up your favorite companies and click apply on their websites. Yeah, that's
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Can you share tips for standing out during interviews on your resume? I know you guys mentioned stuff like tailoring your resume or doing mock interviews, but do you have any specific tips on how to kind of set yourself apart from the other candidates? Thank you.
I think for interviews is having like that kind of set of projects to talk about, and that these projects you're so good in, they'll ask you follow-up questions, you can just explain it. And once you make a project, you can pretty much do that. So like just go out there and make those independent projects. I think school like and university you also do projects as well. Include that. Hackathons are a good way. So that's like I guess that's both for resume and interviews. This will make your resume full and you have all these different experiences. And interviews you can talk about these projects. And make sure to do like a variety of projects and not just kind of like the same type. And I think it's important that in interviews, especially like for different questions, like talk about different projects. Like you don't want to just be talking about one project, just different aspects of it. You want to kind of use each question as an opportunity to introduce this new like skill or project that you've done. But yeah, that's pretty much kind of adding on to the last question. I think Zareen can add more.
Yeah, I totally agree with Aditya. It's really helpful to have like things that you're doing outside of just your schooling to make you stand out. So I did a lot of extracurricular work, like outside of my coursework. I joined a lot of hackathons. I went to a lot of competitions, and I think that's what really helped to boost my resume, but also help me talk about interesting things during the interviews. Sometimes you might even connect with your interviewer because maybe you did the same type of like thing during university. In terms of technical skills, I think a really helpful thing to have is um, the understanding behind the problem that you're approaching. So in lead code, there's like typically a data structure that they follow, but having an understanding of what other data structures are possible, understanding what like the thought processes behind the technical problem re really helps. Because they want to know that like you understand what's happening instead of just like answering the question, like you're talking through all your like all the thoughts that you have. Maybe you have two or three different methods of solving this problem that'll really help to show that you know your technical you have your technical knowledge and you know what's actually happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one way to stand out that's always really going to make a difference is obviously having um, exceptional experience from the past. So whether that be hackathons or cool open source projects you maintain or previous work, like for me, I attribute most of the reason why I got the first interview from Shopify, um, that I was working at a startup for about a year prior to working at Shopify. But another thing that I think is kind of underrated is that a lot of the times you'll be interviewing with someone that isn't working directly in engineering. They might be a product manager or someone working in HR, at least for the initial interview. And a really good way to make a lasting impression is to just kind of show that you have the type of personality and like are the type of person that they would want to work with. So, you know, don't kind of show that you are really desperate for this internship or position. Kind of don't talk like a robot. Be friendly, but also keep it professional. Um, and genuinely ask about like how you can be a better match for the company. And I think that will get you, much further than just like listing off all your accomplishments from the past, because um, these people are interviewing sometimes up to 20 people a day. And chances are, unless you're doing something extremely exceptional, a lot of the things you mention will end up being forgotten by the end of the workday. So if you can make a lasting personal impression, that will give you a much higher chance of, being remembered by that HR person or product manager than mentioning every project that you've done in the past.
So I already talked a bit about this for the resume, but there's one more thing you can do. Use bold. Some may disagree, but I find it's really good to bold things that are important on your resume. When you have a lot of text, it helps guide the hiring manager's eyes and makes it easier to stand out. Just don't go overboard with it and bold entire paragraphs. Also, if you can, don't put school projects on your resume unless you absolutely have to, like Huffman tree compression or whatever, because guaranteed they've probably seen it before, and maybe students have already mentioned it. Like they'll know it's a school project, and that's not really showing them how passionate you are. Uh, During the interview, I agree 100% with what Saad said. Like, you have to set a really good impression. Make sure to brag about yourself. It's your time to show off and convince the manager that you're the one for the job. Leave a lasting impression. So even like crack some jokes if it helps. Try to make them remember you. So in my interview, I remember like it was on Halloween and I made a few jokes and the manager really liked it. They're laughing with me. So that's really a good thing to do. And especially if your interviewer is like your your team's manager or something, that makes it a lot more important to set a good impression because they're going to work with you for months and like they know that, so they want to hire someone that they actually want to work with. And it's okay if you don't know everything on the technical because that's what a co-op is for. It's for you to learn on the job and hopefully convert to a full time. So they're not really looking for you to be the smartest guy. They're looking at you to be the most likable, I guess. And even during my interview, I remember my manager asked me like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how proficient are you at like C? And I had to lowball myself. I gave myself a 6 because I looked him up before and I saw he worked for 20 years as an engineer. And if I give myself like a 9 or 10, like I'd just be shooting myself in the foot because if I there's no way I'm gonna be a 9 or 10 and he's also a 9 or 10 with 20 years of industry experience. So if they ever ask you something like that, never give yourself that high of a rating because they know like you're just kidding. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. Those are really good answers. And this next question, we just want to know if there were any things that you guys, any challenges that you guys faced during the application process. How did you overcome them? And basically, kind of giving advice what to avoid doing. Thank you, Erin, for the example question. That's really interesting as well. Do you guys have any other challenges that you guys want to talk about during the application process?
I don't really know about any challenges, to be honest. It's pretty straightforward process. I don't know if the others had any challenges.
If anyone has any challenges they want to talk about, it's fine. But if not, we can move on to the next question.
I guess I'll go then. So I get a big challenge for me was just not getting noticed. I think I applied to 50 or 60 places. I only heard back from a few and I got like 3 interviews. It can sometimes feel like you're just throwing resumes into the void and you can't always overcome this. You just have to keep applying or use a different site. Or if you're really desperate, like connect with people on LinkedIn and message them. Uh, but yeah, other than that, I agree. The application process is usually pretty straightforward. I guess maybe OAs could be a part of the application process. If you find OAs challenging, then brush up on the code, I guess.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. We know that referrals are very important, especially in like really big companies where they get like thousands of candidates to review every day. But did you guys network with anyone at the company before applying? And if so, how did that help?
I didn't really network with anyone before applying for like Amazon, like for that year. But the year before, I did like go on LinkedIn and I got a referral in Amazon, but I didn't get anyone. Like I didn't get like through the process. But the guy did tell me that for I think like kind of really big companies like Amazon and stuff, like referrals might not be as useful because it doesn't really mean much. Like they're kind of looking at your like resume more and like the skills and experience you have. So I really wonder how important referrals are. Maybe the others had a different experience, but like to be honest, I don't think a referral has really helped me that much. Maybe I think one time it gave me an interview. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to network though. Like it doesn't hurt to have a referral. So definitely like if things aren't working out, then maybe that's an avenue to go forward.
Sorry, for me, I personally also didn't find networking super helpful. I don't think any referral I ever got panned out super well. So yeah, maybe I'm just unlucky. I know some people have really good success with getting referrals and having like network with people within the company. I remember Microsoft also having a policy of not having like the referral pathway and just the direct application pathway for interns and new grads are not like it's the same. So if you're already like a working engineer, it's probably really helpful to have a referral, but I don't think it's just because of the number of applications they get as for interns and new grads, it's just not as useful. I did like contact other interns that I knew or like people that I know of before I had an interview with the company, so I could just learn a little bit about their interview process and learn about what type of questions they ask, like if the lead code tagged questions are helpful, like I'll hopefully I'll use that information. But yeah, I don't think I got referrals either. Yeah.
Yeah, Shopify doesn't really do referrals internally, at least for new grad and intern roles. But I did speak to someone working in their language models team just to kind of hear about engineering at Shopify. And they I didn't ask for a referral, but they did say that they would speak to someone. So you can kind of like do something informal like that and at least get your name on the radar. I did speak to a lot of people that worked at Shopify, either in the past or were currently there as full-time engineers. And if anything, it gives you an idea of what kind of person they're looking for. Referrals are generally good for like I know the big four banks generally hire a lot from referrals, and so does Google. But just read up on the company's referral policy before uh, putting some time into trying to get one. And generally, the referrals that come from people that you don't know or someone that you've just cold emailed or connected with on LinkedIn don't hold as much weight as someone that perhaps you've worked with in the past, or maybe like an alumni from your school.
So I didn't network with anyone before applying at AMD. Now, this could depend on the company, but if you have an interview scheduled, you don't want to actually reach out to someone on that team for interview advice because it puts them in an awkward spot. And sometimes, like, you might set the impression that you're asking for answers, like, what leak code question will they ask or something, and that'll set a negative impression on the employee because they might not want to like work with you then. The, I know that when a few months ago, some people were messaging me on LinkedIn about the internship I'm currently on, and they were asking me for like for the exact questions that I got asked, and I didn't really want to give it to them because I'm going to have to mentor them in a few months, and if they get the job, I would want to work with the most qualified person instead of someone who just got the answers. But yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to the next section, which is more about on-the-job experience. So the first question is, what was a typical day like during your internship?
So it's pretty flexible. It's not like that strict in which you have to be there at 9 and then leave at 5. It's more like you have these meetings scheduled and you can kind of come in whenever you want. I mean, I would try to come in the morning. But just you have to be there for your meetings and you have to get the work done. So it's just kind of having that communication process going on with your manager, just keep on talking and just make sure like you're regulating yourself and that you're getting the project done. So that's pretty much kind of a typical day.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about my day at Microsoft, since that's the most recent that I remember. But typically, the day would start off with just having a stand up if my team is having stand ups that day. We had specific days that we would meet and kind of talk about what project we were working on. I was working on a project with my mentor, so I would have a meeting with my mentor pretty much every single day. So I would schedule that time to talk to her about what the plan was, how we were going to continue on designing a specific part of the project that we were going to work on. Um, and I would spend pretty much the rest of the day coding and testing and talking to other engineers, talking to anyone who was an expert within the project that I was working on. Obviously, spending time to having time to spend with like the other interns within the company, like going to play table tennis or getting lunch together. Like those are obviously the perks. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of extra work that you would have to do. Sometimes there was overtime. So I remember during like the midweeks of my 12-week internship, there was a lot of days I would have to spend a little bit extra at the office and try and finish up the whatever work was left over for a sprint. But Microsoft has a good policy on giving you like half days if you did work extra. Like they're pretty nice about the 9 to 5. So they'll give you a little bit of extra time off on other days if you stayed late for a day and um, had a lot of work to do. But yeah, it's like pretty much every job. And I think most of my internships were just typical, just working all day, meetings, and yeah.
Yeah, so my schedule was 3 days in office in Toronto and then 2 days remote. So it was kind of a hybrid setup. And most of my day was just doing work. So Shopify doesn't really do too many meetings. I would have a weekly stand-up on Tuesday in the morning, and then I would have one-on-ones with my manager and my mentor once a week. And then most of the other time was either in meetings or I would schedule one-on-ones with my teammates if I needed to talk to them about something I was working on. I did usually start my day quite early. Um, I was working with a fully remote team, and most of my teammates were in Europe. So I would log on at around like 5 or 6 a.m. to accommodate for the time zone. Now, that wasn't required or anything, but it just helped me get work done. And yeah, I would usually grab lunch with the other interns around noon, breakfast as well, and then I would be out of the office at around 2 or 3, which is also when most of my European teammates would log off. So um, kind of flexible, but you also have to be flexible when you're working at like a remote first company. But it's definitely not required.
So I originally was 5 days on site, and the office is in Markham, and I live in Oakville. So it's a really long commute. I was getting burnt out fast after the first month. So I just like I pleaded with my manager. I was like, please give me some remote days, and he was like, okay, sure, fine. So then it was like 3 days in office and 2 days online. But it turns out my team's pretty big, and my manager actually doesn't care. So now I'm like 1 day, 1 day in office, and the rest of the days at home, which is really nice. Um, if I'm in office, I typically come in a little bit before 9. I get breakfast, settle down. Uh, I attend my stand up at 10:30 and then get to work. The stand up's so usually only a few minutes. There's no like story points or anything. It's just right to the point. Like here's what these people are working on. I'll frequently message people on Teams for various tasks I have in my backlog and get help from my mentors whenever I'm stuck. Um, some when I do come in, I just chat with my coworkers for hours, honestly. Like like I'll walk around the office and just see like who's not in the meeting and just chat and drink free coffee. There are days where I am forced to come in just because I have to work with hardware instead of software, but most of my job can be done from home, which is really nice. And then yeah, there's just like weekly meetings with my mentors, I guess. I typically leave around 4. I know that the full timers work a lot more than the interns. I'll see them working overtime a bunch, but yeah, I guess it's more output based. We're not really getting paid by the hour, so no one cares if you're leaving early or coming in late. Yeah.
Moving on to the next question. What was the most exciting or impactful project that you worked on during your internship? Feel free to kind of just rant about it and like talk about it. I think that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the beginning, my project was working with their Canary testing toolkit and basically integrating these other testing frameworks into that toolkit. And so it did have an impact in that it allowed more teams to use this toolkit and it would make their processes much more efficient, especially in creating Canary tests and like developing them. And so I think it was actually it was really exciting because I don't know if it was actually exciting, but it was kind of stressful because there was a lot of roadblocks along the way. And especially integrating this one testing framework, there were a lot of problems that were happening. But it kind of kept it interesting, which we're always trying to like work around this roadblock, trying to get it to work. I think kind of halfway through we had to kind of pivot the project because that framework didn't have some had some compatibility issues with the testing toolkit. So we pivoted to integrate this other testing framework. And also the software design process I found really interesting. And once we kind of figure out how to integrate it, we need to present this entire design on how this will work within the coding framework and integrate it within the framework using like software design methods that you learn in class. So that stuff is really important. And to be honest, the actual coding part, which I integrated, was only done in like a week or 2 weeks. The most process was designing it to create like a sustainable and efficient way to integrate and just working with the frameworks to kind of figure out how it would integrate. So it was a really like fun project and I'm glad that I was able to make such a big impact. And yeah, I think Zareen can talk about her version.
Yeah, I worked on one project at AWS and two projects at Microsoft, but I'll be honest, the Microsoft projects are very internal based, so it's kind of hard to explain and describe, but I'll describe the project that I worked at Amazon. So my project was kind of like the easiest way to describe it is like we're trying to prevent bad actors from trying to get login information for AWS customers. So two ways they can do that is like through password spraying, like trying on many, many different passwords, or DDoS attacks. And my project was basically to help prevent a lot of these DDoS attacks by creating, I can't talk to like in detail, but like creating a system where they would be delayed if they tried to um, go and create a DDoS attack. So this was a really interesting project to me. It was my first time working in security-based systems. It was also my first like official internship at a company. So it was very unique to be able to start designing the system from the ground up. I also spent like Aditya like a month designing everything and discussing with different stakeholders, talking to other security engineers to see what their thoughts were on the project before I actually started implementing it. And um, after the first month, which was all design, getting reviewed, getting it shot down, getting a bunch of comments, and like fixing the project, fixing the design, and improving on it. I spent the next 2 months creating the backend process and integrating it with like sister teams who were in charge of the front end pages of the AWS login system. So it was really, really interesting. I learned a lot and it kind of motivated me to keep like staying in the area of security and privacy engineering. But yeah, like it affected many, many AWS customers. So I found it to be really nice and interesting and impactful to work on.
Yeah, so I had one major project in my internship at Shopify. So I worked in infrastructure, and generally it takes a bit longer to, make your first PR in an infrastructure team than like a front end or back end team. So I spent pretty much the first 6 weeks just first of all getting familiar with Ruby on Rails, which is the main language at Shopify, and getting familiar with Shopify's infrastructure, specifically our team's products, which connect very closely with all of Shopify's core services because we're the database team. So my project was adding active retries to database migrations. So essentially, if a migration fails, previously some engineer would have to get on call and retry it, which causes delays. My project just automated those retries or sent notifications when a retry wasn't possible. So this was really mission critical, and it took a lot of talking to with different teams that perform migrations often uh, to kind of get this approved. The actual coding and like implementation didn't take that long, but the designing and testing was by far the longest and most difficult part of the process. So this took about 3 weeks in total during the end of my internship, and I think now this runs every time anyone at Shopify makes a migration. So and obviously saves time when they fail. So it's cool to make an impact across an entire organization. But again, like can't really this wouldn't have been possible within like the first few weeks of my internship just because the nature of infrastructure work is requires a lot more context.
So I always feel like my most exciting project is the next one that I'm going to work on, and uh, I'm basically like halfway through my internship, and it's been ramping up. I'm getting to work on more harder tasks, and I find it very fulfilling. So, and I mentioned like previously, like we are working on making the GPUs just faster at waking up and stuff like that. Uh, I think that's pretty interesting. Because we're basically optimizing it down to like the microseconds. Like, and it sounds like not a lot of time. It's not a lot of time, but it adds up, and we're trying to really make it as fast as possible. So I ended up having to modify the driver, collect extra data, analyze that data using my own scripts or methods. Maybe I'll put it in like an Excel sheet or something, and I have to present these findings to people that are like much more experienced than me, like at like the fellow level or higher, and it's crazy. But other than that, like there's definitely nothing what I do is sometimes like I'll just pick up a ticket to fix a bug, and it's pretty impactful because I know that like millions of people use our products, and that code will run on their machine in a few months or whatever.
Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to our last session. Sorry, can you go to the next question? The advice and takeaways. We have two more questions before we delve into the Q&A. So what advice would you guys give students aspiring to land internships at companies like yours?
Hello, can you guys hear me? I think my
Yeah.
computer froze. Okay, okay. Um, advice, I think to be honest, just keep on applying. I think that's important. And also keep on building your resume, do more exciting projects. Kind of like when you're applying, look at like what they're looking for. And most companies kind of looking for the same thing. So do projects that will intrigue these companies. I think nowadays like ML is really important, kind of having like ML type projects because that's like kind of everyone is doing that, like software engineers, software developers, they're working on ML projects as well. So getting kind of those experience in which you know that they're looking for and you know what they want, these type of skills. So do projects like that. And yeah, just keep on working on your resume. I feel like it's easy to kind of give advice on, oh, change this thing in your small little thing on your resume and it'll make a big difference. I don't think that there's any silver bullet. I think you just got to keep on trying and eventually you'll get that one opportunity and it'll just kind of lead to more opportunities. And to be honest, it is kind of like a little bit of a numbers kind of luck game. Just kind of keep on putting in the effort and it'll work out. I think like software engineering is kind of like that field in which if you keep on doing sooner or later, for some it might be earlier, for some it might be later, but eventually you'll kind of get what like those opportunities you deserve. So yeah, just keep on working.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Aditya said. Um, for every interview I got, I probably had 50 to 100 rejections. So it really is a numbers game. So you want to like apply as much as possible. Before I got the interview at Microsoft, I applied to them in my second year and third year and for like 15 different positions and nothing, like radio silence, nothing ever happened. So you just have to be lucky once and um, study and make sure that you're prepared when you do actually get the chance so that when you are in the interview process they really like you and you can get your foot in the door. You just need one internship before it becomes a little bit easier in the upcoming, like if you want for your next one and the next one. And for your new grad, you really want to have that experience ready because most companies like would give you the job if you already have experience working in an internship position. Um, like smaller companies, bigger companies, like it's just yeah, you really need to like try and get a little bit of experience through as many ways as possible. So try and build yourself up, and every year it'll get easier and easier.
Yeah, so I think two main things that I would advise. So first of all, just make sure that you fit the requirements of what they're looking for in the role. And that doesn't really mean what's written in the job description. It means, this isn't a line of work that you can really fake. So you have to be a good software developer. There's no way around that. And you have to be good at your technology and computer science fundamentals. So what they test you in the interview shouldn't just be something that learn during application season. You should be, paying attention in your classes and genuinely be curious about, computer science fundamentals and, um, principles of software engineering. And that kind of brings you to the level of, someone that would succeed in that sort of role. And then the second part is just showing and communicating to that company that you meet the requirements. So this is the part that a lot of people have trouble on. Getting to the level of proficiency where you're hireable isn't generally the hardest part. So being able to communicate that you'd be a good fit, um, that relies a lot more on understanding the incentive structure of the company. So whether it's a big tech company that's trying to, recruit the best of the best and just fill their next year's talent pool, or whether it's a startup that's looking for someone specific to join a specific team, you have to do some research into the company and role you're applying for, and kind of what the company wants to get out of you, so you can kind of, you know, put it very simply what you can offer, and then it becomes very easy for them to make a decision on whether to hire you or not, rather than making them do the research and work on your behalf. So I think understanding the type of role that you're applying for and making it almost, making it so that you're almost so good that they can't ignore you, um, is the part that I would focus the most on after you've made sure that you meet the fundamentals and that you'd actually succeed in the role that you're applying to.
I think Saad pretty much said everything I would have said. I agree 100%. Like, there's other than that, maybe practice leak code. You don't have to be able to do leak code hard questions. Just try to have like a basic competency to be able to do like an easy or some medium questions. And so it's pretty popular these days. And make sure that your resume shows that you're actually passionate about software engineering. And if you're not passionate about software engineering, then I don't know. But yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Mohammed. I joined the meeting late. I just wanted to introduce myself. I worked as a business solutions analyst at the CIBC and the application engineering department. I mainly worked with their client databases and the customer information system teams. And yeah, that's it.
Do you want to answer this question too, Wale?
Okay, could I just have a second? Okay, so to primarily work at CIBC, as I'm just extending on what the other said, you really have to tailor your resume to the role, right? Like not just, submit your resume everywhere for the same resume everywhere. Sort of make sure it it catches the eyes, you know. Sometimes, a lot of the times in the descriptions, they may list certain softwares or certain tools you've worked with, or certain languages they want you to know, or some concepts. So make sure that you embolden that. Networking as well at CIBC helps, but at the same time, you should know people from the teams, and you shouldn't straight up just go and be like, "Yo, just give me," sort of show that you've worked with similar systems before, or you have relevant experience, and not just go and ask for it like a robot, you know?
Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to the Q&A session. If you guys have any questions, please write them down below in the chat and we'll answer them.
Yeah, we'll give you guys
So
a minute to write down the questions.
I see the how do you decide what side projects to work on? Try to tailor your side projects to what you actually want to do on the job. So if you want to do like for me, I'm doing more of like a systems programming job. Uh, you would want your side projects to be related to that. So all of my side projects on my resume were systems related or embedded.
Okay, I see a good. Sorry, my voice. I've lost my voice a bit, but I believe it's Wadiz. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He asks, "What's the best minor or major combination with computer science?" I'm not gonna say UTM just because we have multiple people from different universities here, but what do you guys think the best minor or major combination is with computer science? If anyone can answer.
I think the it's kind of unconventional, but the major that I've seen get a lot of success in like really high level roles is anything with engineering physics or physics in general. Um, Now, for most software engineering roles, physics is not really needed or relevant, but it just shows that you're able to solve very complex problems. And for the right companies, it can be a very good signal.
To be
I'll add
honest,
on to
oh,
Saad's. Oh,
go ahead, go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Because I'm an engineer in physics, so I agree that engineering physics, I do like it. Specifically at McMaster, it like gives you opportunities to do a lot of additional work, but I wish I had more traditional software knowledge. Like I had never taken a software architecture class, and I think that's like really, really useful knowledge that I'm missing out on. Like I'd have to learn on the job. A lot of the discrete math, like if you want to work in gaming, I think those are like skills you don't get to work in. But I was able to take operating systems, I was able to take typical data structure classes, I was able to take like know your core knowledge is basically what I'm saying. You can hopefully learn the rest in the job, but I would say if you're really like passionate about software, that like getting a degree in software engineering or computer science helps a lot.
I'm a computer science specialist degree at U of T, so I didn't have to do any minors or majors. To be honest, I don't think it matters that much. It's no one's really looking for a stats minor or math minor. Maybe if you want to go into data and stuff, stats is helpful. Like think about like what area you want to go into and think about like if those classes will benefit you. But even with that, I'll see a stats major as a software engineer role. Like it's not that important as long as you're doing this work with the resume, building those projects, doing those software courses like Zareen said, those important courses like data structures, operating systems. It doesn't really matter. Like you're still competing with all the computer science majors if you're a stats major. They don't really care that much about the difference. I've seen like a stats major doing computer science minor, and he's like such a good like software engineer now and like working in top companies. So it's not really that important.
Yeah, I'd say the major doesn't matter too much. Someone asked me, like, do you think school prepared you well for your role? Not really. I haven't used anything really. from school, but I'm also I I mean I only have a CS minor. I did a math major and a philosophy minor as well. Uh, because I just found math more interesting than CS. The theory isn't really that useful in day-to-day work.
I would disagree with the school. I think the school does like prepare you well, especially like U of T is like it's very rigorous. So you have to put in that work. Like to be honest, like I've never really like done lead code that regularly. And I never really had to because your classes teach you so well that I can just like kind of prep before an interview and I'll be fine. Like doing these lead code, like medium problems and stuff like that. So I think that does benefit if you like I don't think you should neglect school. I think you should pay attention in class. And I think grades, I know people say they don't matter, but I feel like they might do. Like I feel like your GP and stuff, like it can only help you. It's not gonna hurt you. And it's gonna make you like a better like you're not only getting a better student, but you're gonna be a better like software engineer. It's all about learning. And so building those skills and building that work ethic, especially like to do well in school, it will help you. It will prepare you well for the role. Like you'll be when you're doing the internship, you're gonna be very like kind of organized and you know you want to get this work done and you know like your capabilities.
Okay, you know what? You're probably right. Maybe I was a bit too harsh on it, but I think UTM definitely taught me like how to learn well. I think that was like my biggest takeaway from school is it taught me how to learn and apply knowledge better. The actual material itself, like
Yeah, I know what you're
it's not
saying.
really relevant
Yeah.
for my job, but it definitely prepared me to handle stress, handle yeah,
Yeah.
like you said,
I
the
mean,
work
some
ethic.
courses are probably more relevant than others. Like data structures, algorithms, I think like that's going to be your most important for doing like interview questions, data structure and algorithm. And I think there's the next course after that for like theory in computer science. Like they teach you dynamic programming. That's important too. And I think operating systems is probably useful for you, right, Aaron?
I never actually took operating systems.
Oh.
One of the questions that we prepped on was like, what's one thing you knew before starting your internship? I would have probably taken operating systems. Maybe I don't
Hmm.
think it would have helped a lot for my job, but it would have been good to connect, like to see the bigger picture in what I'm doing, probably.
All right, I have one more question that I just saw in the chat. It said, how many projects should I aim to work on, and how do you guys go about choosing projects specifically?
I don't think I don't think the number really matters. I have, I think, two on my resume. Um, when I didn't have any work experience, I think I put up to four. But they should really you should really just optimize for, um, if it's your first few projects, like scope of how many different technologies you can learn and whether you can actually finish it or not. Um, and also making it either usable or visible. Just visibility is very important when you're working on your first projects. Whether it's like being able to click on a link or watch a video, someone should be able to see the outcome of your project because most people are not going to go and look at your GitHub repository and go through um, the work you've done. So you have to kind of make it easy for whoever's reading your resume and looking at your projects to, see the impact of what you've done. Then when you get a bit more advanced, let's say you get some work experience, you should really optimize for projects that kind of show that you can do work that's very adjacent to what you do on the job. So then I'd optimize for like complexity, as well as something that's like niche or novel, something that not a lot of people can do. So one example, this is from one of my friends, is he maintains a web server or a web server framework written in Golang, and it's one of the most popular ways to make a web server in Go. Now, that's not something that you can do by following a YouTube tutorial, and it's not something that you can copy. So it kind of shows that you can do work that other people can't do, which is a very good signal to have on your resume.
I think sorry, Zareen, you wanted to talk?
Sorry, yeah, I
Yeah,
wanted
go
to
ahead, go ahead.
quickly add something. I agree that like having a good stack is important. But I also found that if you worked on a project through multiple weeks on and off, like that's really helpful. My first project was a project I worked on after my first year, and it was like a Raspberry Pi project where like it would use some like TensorFlow Lite to track and identify different objects. And then the next summer, I added in like a facial detection feature and like I put it on like a little car and I moved around and like look for my cat basically. So it's interesting, like if you keep working on a project and you keep developing it, and if you find a way to relate it to your real life, like you're solving a real life problem, that's also really helpful.
I just want to add, I think like the quality of the project matters more than kind of the quantity. You can have like as many, but if they're just kind of basic, simple projects, it's not gonna say much. You want to see like what this project is saying about me, and you can say like, oh, this project is demonstrating my skills in like server development or like web development, and have like a different project demonstrating skills in like ML. So like have this kind of variety and the like good quality of projects. And I do think that I think it depends on what year of school you're in. If you're in like third year or like final year, you've probably done courses in which you've done projects within that course, like just not like assignment, but like as a group project, you kind of like thought of an innovative idea and you built this project and you worked on it for like a couple of months. Those projects are good because you worked on it for a long period of time. You've done complicated stuff with it. You've built like software designs for it for class. So you can talk a lot about that. And I think that's it's important to kind of like build those kind of good and like long-term projects. But if you're like earlier in university, then yeah, you mostly just work on your personal projects. Hackathons are good. But yeah, just I think once you start going more and getting more experience, you know what skills are important and you know what project, oh, this is actually like a complicated and like important project, like a cool project to have. So yeah, just kind of like being aware about all that.
Sorry, could I answer one more question from the chat? I'll be really quick. So someone asked about like internships in Canada versus the States, and I want to like make people aware of this because a lot of people don't know about this. So if you're looking to get an internship in the States, the process if you're a Canadian citizen is to get a J1 visa. So it can happen through like getting sponsored by a company, but a lot of universities, I know Waterloo does it, I know McMaster does it, I know I think U of T also does it where like they use um external company, like one of the well-known ones is Cultural Vistas, and they kind of help you get the J1 process, J1 visa process. So if a company is like, oh, well, we have to sponsor you, you can be like, well, my school can help out with the process. So it's not going to be like a burden on their side, and that can kind of make you a more attractive candidate. I've known a lot of friends who got internships in the US through this process. So like make sure you're aware, make sure you look it up, like look up J1 visa process, U of T or McMaster or whatever. You can learn a little bit about that process. For international students, unfortunately, I don't know. I think it really depends. Yeah, I'm not sure about international students.
Adding on to that, I just remembered of something that happened to a friend like last summer. He had an internship in California, and it was for a really big company. So he just checked the box saying that he is eligible to work in the US and did not require sponsorship. But he actually did require sponsorship, but that was good that he checked that box anyways because he probably wouldn't have gotten the interview if he didn't say he was eligible. And since he had already passed the interview, they're like, okay, we can get you sorted out for this. It's fine. So make sure you pay attention to those boxes anyways if you're applying to a US company because they won't want to hire you if you're not eligible, obviously, and they won't want to hire you if you require sponsorship. Or maybe they will, but they're less likely to.
All right, I'm gonna do one more question and then we'll call it a day. Alex asked what experiences were most useful for learning the skills needed for internships. And he said like soft skills wise.
I think every interview they're gonna ask you like what some projects were you led on and like you did like, some leadership role and you want to have something to talk about there. They're gonna have this question about like when you had to deal with a conflict. So like working as a team, you had some conflict and you had to deal with it. So just those soft skills they'll always ask you about, and you want to be able to, explain how you deal with conflicts, explain how you're taking a leadership role and stuff like that.
For me personally, I worked in retail for like a year and a half before like getting into software, like during high school and for the first year in my university. And honestly, in any job where you're interacting with other people or like you're in a customer facing role, it really helps because it kind of develops your ability to answer questions on the spot, help resolve difficult situations, and it's really useful for interviews too. So, I would say try and like I'm not saying go get a part-time job, but like try and meet with people and work in like areas or do a club position where you would have to work with a lot of different types of people and make sure like you're improving your communication skills, your leadership skills. Like those are really, really important.
All right, I think that's it. I think we're about 11 minutes overboard, so sorry about that. Um, yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, DTA. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Zareen. Thank you, Saad. And thank you, Mohammed, for joining this event. I know you guys have busy schedules, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And don't worry, guys, if you have more questions, we'll be sharing the panelists' LinkedIn after the Zoom meeting, so that you can definitely message them. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day today, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.